All right, and we're live. Oh, we're not live. Oops. I already messed up. Hello, hello there, everybody. Um, with me today, I have my good friend. Anyway, we went to Dulles High School together. We did recycling together. Did we do orchestra together? I mean, we were in orchestra. No, yeah, just too good for me. In honors. And anyway, she currently attends UTD studying comp sci. She'll be starting an internship next week. Exciting, exciting. Woohoo. Congrats.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about yourself, Julia?
I'm happy to be here.
Oh yeah, she goes to Epic up at UTD. Yes. For all my Ivy people watching. Let's be friends. Okay. Anyways, as always, we start these off with a little bit of family history. So, Julia, tell us about your family, how they came here, more about yourself and you growing up. Yeah.
Okay, so both my parents are from Taiwan. They were born and they grew up there. And my grandparents grew up under post-Japanese rule under Taiwan, so it was like a 50-year period ending around like 1945. And during that time, like Taiwan wasn't very developed in terms of like culturally and like education. Schooling wasn't even required. So my grandparents didn't go to school until they were like 13, which is really weird. But even when they went to school, everything was like taught in Japanese, and like they learned a lot of like lifestyle needs, I guess. Like they were taught like personal hygiene and how to like cook different dishes. And yeah, so that was like a big part of like my grandparents growing up and like how they were influenced. And so because of that, both of my parents, like they don't really speak Japanese, but like they're influenced through like the work ethic and like the different influences that they brought to Taiwan. So for my mom's side, or both my parents grew up in southern Taiwan, which is important because it was like um, less developed, and it was mainly like a port, like for a lot of like overseas shipment and stuff. So it was very diverse, and it had like a lot of different kinds of like people, including like Aboriginals or like Dutch people. So my mom grew up in a family-owned like neon lights business where they like bend the lights and like make signs out of them. And so she was the oldest sibling, and because of that, she's like very responsible and caring for her two younger brothers. And so due to that, she always like worked really hard before she could like play and do the fun stuff. So due to that, like I'm sure like in Asian countries, there's a lot of like exams that they have to take in order to go to middle school, high school, and university. So they always had to work really hard to study to pass like whichever major they wanted to go into. So my mom ended up going to I would say like a pretty prestigious university in Taipei, which is like the capital of Taiwan. And so afterwards, she studied like liberal arts, and then came to the U.S. to study a master's for Chinese art history.
Wow, that's a pretty niche major.
Yeah, it was very
Chinese art history.
very unconventional, I would say.
Wow, that's so interesting. Does she do something with that today?
Not today, but after she studied masters in the U.S., she went back and became like a curator for a museum. So she had to like fly all across the world to like collect paintings that her boss wanted to buy.
Wow, that sounds like such an exotic job.
Yeah, especially
Wow.
for that time period.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. All this is new to me. Crazy. So with that, can you explain more about like the Japanese? Was it I not 100%? Was it occupation or was it uh how did it influence or yeah Taiwan?
So like originally Taiwan was just like an island. Like it was just another place for like like conquerors back in the day to go and to like because it was very like there were a lot of natural resources like rice and like sugarcane. So like that's where a lot of Europeans and stuff got their shipments. So other than that, it wasn't very developed until like the Japanese came in 1895, and they came because of I think there was like I think they were like taking over a lot of the countries in like that region, like the East Asian region, and so they took over Taiwan, and obviously like the Taiwanese like natives were like pushed aside, but apart from that, like they actually worked on Taiwan because they saw the amount of natural resources they had. Because if you look at like the map of Taiwan, like basically 75% of it is like just land that you can't live on. It's just like resources, and then like the coast is where all the cities are, the west coast. So after they took over Taiwan and like I guess like China, like the in 1949, like a bunch of Chinese went to Taiwan in order to like escape the communist China on the
Mm.
mainland. So because of that, that's when Taiwan started to develop a lot more and become like, I guess like associated with China today.
Okay. So for your family, were they like those Chinese fleeing the communists, or were they like
So
Aboriginals, or like yeah?
yeah, that's a good question. Both my like parents' families, like their ancestors, were like native Taiwanese. So we're not like native, but like they were there before the Japanese, like before the Chinese in
Oh,
1949. Yeah.
okay. Wow. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Okay. Nice, nice. So, oh, what about your dad?
Yeah. So my father's side is like more connected to Japan, I would say, because my grandpa, so my dad's dad, ran a I guess like pharmacy in Taiwan. And like back then, because of the Japanese rule, like a lot of their, I guess, drugs came from Japan. So he frequently had to travel to Japan. So I don't really know if this has much to do with my dad's like quirkiness. So he was like very adventurous growing up, and he would always like try new things. And I think it's just because of the like times that he lived in. Like there was no TV, there was no refrigerator. Like he didn't stay in his home like 90% of the time like we do now. So because of that, he was always very interested in like sciences or like engineering. So he studied like chemical engineering, and then afterwards he came to the US for his PhD in order to fulfill his father's dream of getting a PhD. And he studied,
Hmm,
yeah, he studies civil and safety engineering.
cool. And does he do that still?
Does he? Wait, what was your question?
Does he do that still?
Yeah, he's like he works at a chemical
Nice.
company. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. So I remember in the beginning, like when you were talking to your mom, so you mentioned that they like both grew up on the south side of Taiwan, and I was like the poor side. Did they ever like talk about their childhood and like yeah, I guess what it was like growing up?
So I want to say it was like the poor side, but maybe like um it was like one of the more populous cities compared to like the rural, like actual rural countryside of Taiwan. But I think they enjoyed their childhood a lot because like everything is in such close quarters in Taiwan since there's a lot of people and a lot less land. So they'd always like be really friendly with like the neighbors and like to me it didn't sound like they had a very difficult time growing up, but like my grandparents had a like tougher time growing up because like they weren't allowed to, or not allowed to, but their families didn't own like businesses. Like they had to get by just doing like technical jobs.
Mm, interesting. It was cool. Also, just thinking back to, I think you also mentioned how like I was in the South Side too. There was like a good amount of diversity, like the Dutch and Aboriginals. That's really interesting because when I think about Asia, it's often like a very homogenous culture. Unless you think of places like maybe Hong Kong and Singapore. I guess like these all island entities. So that kind of makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know a lot about Taiwan. That's cool. That's cool. Okay, so how did they, your parents? Yeah, I mean they're living with you in that house, right? How did they immigrate
Yes.
over? Or
Wait, what's
no?
your
Did you hear?
question?
Sorry. How did they immigrate over?
Okay,
And like this, how did they like decide to stay and stuff? Yeah.
yeah, so originally like my mom wanted to stay in Taiwan because like she felt she was working there in a museum, she felt more comfortable being in the same country that she grew up in. And when she came to America, I think she faced some like discrimination or like kind of like a culture shock that she wasn't really used to. But the reason why she came to America was because my dad, like he basically just forced her to, because he wanted to stay in America to continue his like studies. Because when he married my mom, like he didn't get his PhD yet, so he wanted to finish that and then just find a job and start living in America.
Okay. Pause. So you gotta tell us how they got married for.
All
You
right, all
know,
right.
tell us their
Okay,
love
this is
story.
yeah, this is whack. But
Oh really?
basically, they met through like a blind date, which was very common back
Okay.
then. Yeah, and they met through both of their moms' hairstylists, like yeah,
So
barber
they
shop.
had the same.
Yeah, and I actually like. I mean, it's like our next door
Okay.
neighbor in
Oh.
Taiwan. Yeah.
Okay.
So they met. They had a blind date, and then yeah, they met. Like I guess my mom was set up on a lot of blind dates, and she wasn't very attracted to anyone, including my dad. But then she was like forced to give it another shot because of the mutual friendship between their parents. Yeah.
And then the second time is the charm. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
After this, you should go ask both sides of the story. That's
Okay, well, like
hilarious.
I think my mom was like okay with it because my dad has a lot of different hobbies, and one of them includes like carpentry or like woodworking. So my mom was like looking into buying furniture for the museum at that time, and they had a mutual like they had the same interests. So my dad was like, "I'll teach you about furniture."
Okay. Cool. Okay. So then they got hitched in Taiwan, and then your dad
Literally, like the
was
third day after they got married, they immigrated to America.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Oh, so what's the process like? Or I don't know if you know, but like for my family, like immigrating was not easy. It took several years.
Like in terms of the paperwork,
Yeah, like yeah, the process.
I think my dad had like, I guess it's like a visa. I don't know what it was called back then, but he had like a student fellowship to like study. And honestly, I don't know how my mom got here, but
Well, she's
I think,
married to him, so it's just like family.
yeah, probably.
Okay. Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because you said he wasn't finished with his PhD, so it should be pretty easy to hop on over.
Hmm.
Oh, that's so interesting. Grace's dad was the same. I don't know if it was a PhD, but wait, yeah. Okay, I'm mixing up stories. Yeah, so her dad too, like just came over and took his wife over.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, okay, okay. Well, where did they move to? Did they move to Houston first, or you know? Do you know?
They moved to Louisiana, which is like where I was born.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And then afterwards, like 3 years later, we moved to Houston. But I mean, it's the same job, just a different location.
Yeah. I mean, that would have huge differences on how you grew up. Okay. So then you've just been in Houston and the rest of your life so far?
Yeah,
After
and
moving? Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Gotcha. Wait, so did your dad like finish his PhD in Louisiana and then move?
So he studied in Delaware, and then
Oh,
he moved to Louisiana. I mean, there was a few like other jobs in between, but they were like super short.
okay. Interesting. How did they decide on Houston?
It's because like my dad's older sister, so my aunt was already in Houston at that time, and yeah, they just thought it would be like nicer to be closer to family. But other than that, I don't have any like other relatives in the States.
Interesting. Is your family aware of Old Chinatown?
Like Bel Air.
No,
Oh.
it's in downtown, but okay, that's okay. My family had a business. Well, they still have property in Old Chinatown, but it's like gone Chinatown. Anyway, that's cool.
That's cool, yeah.
Maybe I could talk about that some other time. Okay, interesting. Um, so then for them, I know you talked a little bit about your like mom's perspective on like everything about moving over. What about your dad and like what was it like making the change to America and then, and things like discrimination and prejudice.
So when I talked to my dad, he seemed very like chill with it. Like of course it was different, but like that's what he was expecting. And he grew very accustomed to like making American friends, eating American food, and like yeah, just like the language and stuff like that. He was very like open to it, and I don't think he faced a lot of like discrimination. But he always, I think it's because he wanted to like blend in with the culture and try to, make himself be comfortable with like the immigrant life.
Okay. What about your mom? How did she handle?
So when she came to the States, it was for grad school, and I think she didn't have as much like as many funds to like rent her own place and stuff. So she had to live with a bunch of different like other international students, and for her, I think that was very comforting as well because even though they all didn't know the language like English that well, they could like relate to each other about their Asian like struggles being in America.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. That's cool. That's cool to see like your dad's like mentality. I don't know. There's so much to think about that. Did you uh, did you ever watch the PBS documentary series Asian American in May?
No, I don't think I
No.
saw that.
Oh, it's okay. Oh.
Was it like very
It's yeah, it
relatable?
was good. Yeah, I mean, um, what was it? Oh man, I don't want to get the acronym wrong. It was like May's like Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, so they released it for that. But one of the things that were talked about was like the high barriers and costs to helping helping or relatives helping their family come over, and then like the reality that like a lot of these people like hated it here, and it was just like, oh wait, was that? Yeah, or wait, was that a documentary? Gosh. Anyways, I'll continue. And it's cool to see like that contrast of your dad like just really mm, trying to embrace, I guess, America and its culture.
Yeah,
I
I
was
mean,
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure he like experienced like discrimination to some extent, but like I remember once he was talking about how like somebody wanted to copy his homework because like they had to do labs and like this guy just couldn't do his labs correctly, so his results were always like skewed. And so he would always like try to like take a look at my dad's lab reports, but like my dad didn't feel like, I mean, of course he felt like, oh, it's because like maybe he's Asian, like he's a little better at what he does and like he's able to get better grades, but like he didn't feel like that was too particularly like harmful to him or anything. Like he felt like it was something that happens like in every culture, right? So like coming to America is just like it's a different person doing it to him, but it's like the same concept.
Mm, okay, that makes sense. Very, very much a realist, huh? That's cool. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Um, well, let's talk to me about you. How was it growing up? I did, I, yeah. I don't know if you've been in the same place the whole time, or you bounced around Houston a little bit, but yeah. How's it growing up, and then like, maybe, and eventually, if you talk about like when did you become aware of like your Asian American identity?
Yeah, so I'll say I grew up in a very like sheltered, comfortable lifestyle. Like I was very free to pick up any hobby I wanted, and of course, being Asian parents, they placed me in like a million things to try to find like what you're good at, right?
So was
Um,
that like forced upon you, or was that a mix of force and like your choice?
in the early ages, I would say I was pretty much forced like to do piano, gymnastics, swim club, stuff like that. But then towards the, I guess, more formative years of my life, I started to like pick and choose what I wanted to do.
Okay. Okay. Continue.
Yeah. Also, I feel like I was very fortunate to like learn about Taiwanese culture even in the States, because like we were allowed to like travel back almost like every other year, and we also went to Chinese school for like most of elementary school. So like I can't read or write much anymore, but like I can recognize, if that counts. Yeah, it's a struggle, but like being able to like be immersed in like the city where like my parents grew up in, I feel like is something not a lot of Asian Americans have access to or like could have done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh, yeah. So, I guess the other part of the question is like, when did you recognize your Asian American identity? Yeah.
I think it was like fourth or fifth grade. Like I was playing these online games, and apparently there were other Asian, I don't know if they were Canadian or Americans on there. Like I didn't know these people at all, right? And they were always like, "Oh, let's create this like Facebook group called Asian Invasion." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, I guess I'm playing this game with you guys. I might as well join." But I didn't really see like the point in like Asian with AZN, if you remember that term back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so during that times, I guess I was exposed to the fact that um, Asian Americans would like congregate together, or like I guess we were more comfortable with each other. But I wasn't really still aware of it until maybe like middle school when I started realizing that like I went to middle school that was pretty like not as diverse. Like they were either African Americans, like Black Americans, or like Asian Americans. So it was a pretty stark contrast in like who I would naturally incline towards in choosing my friends. So that's when I realized like, oh, I have similarities with these people in the way that we eat lunch, in the way that we talk, in the way that we study, and I feel more comfortable with this group of people. And most of them were like Asian Americans.
Mm, okay. So your childhood, like, yeah, the like single digit years. What am I saying? Pretty free of any of those thoughts, I guess. So did you? It makes me wonder, like, how much did you interact with like other people in general and like other races? Because I'm sure, like, with all those activities you're doing too, like, you're gonna encounter people and like went over to friends' houses and stuff. Um, yeah, was it just like happy-go-lucky time?
I don't know if it was like because of the community I grew up in, it was like quite diverse. Like I would say like a quarter of every like the main races, I guess, or not main races. Like there were a quarter of Asians, like a quarter of Black or Hispanics, a quarter of whites and Caucasians, and a quarter of like mixed or other types of races. So it wasn't like there was a huge disparity between my classmates and like how I saw them. But I do remember getting made fun of because of my features, like my not as sharp nose bridge and like my tiny eyes. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But it wasn't
But
like any type of
uh,
bullying.
wait, okay. So you didn't consider that bullying?
I mean, it wasn't to the point where I was like crying about it or like I was that hurt by it. I mean, it was a part of
Uh,
me, right? So like something I had to embrace as well.
Wow. Good little child. I don't know. That's really interesting though. Huh. Because that's interesting that you have this the specific moment with this. You said Asian invasion in fourth and fifth grade. Oh man, I hope UTD memes you. Really funny.
Oh no, please.
It's a 30-minute mark. Anyways, huh. Interesting. Okay. I don't. So, did you grow up in Fort Bend? Like all
Yeah.
your life, basically. Okay. Okay. Cool. I wanted to avoid asking that, but at the same time, like I kind of needed to ask. Okay. Gucci. Okay. So did you? Okay, so we've hit like middle school. Did you think much about like being Asian, like after that, or was it just like something in the back of your head? I mean, we obviously knew like what being Asian like meant, or like we have a peculiar colored pigment of skin. What am I saying? But yeah, did you ever like think deeply about it or anything?
I wouldn't. Yeah, I guess it was just in the back of my head. It's not something I considered like the forefront of my identity until maybe like really late in high school, when like Asians started showing up in media, and like we started like getting press over like accomplishments and whatnot. But I mean, I grew up watching like a lot of Asian YouTubers, or Asian American, yeah, right, yeah. Juan Fear Productions, Kev Jumba, yeah.
Hey, Houston boy.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. The multicultural show? Oh, I guess I have to explain what that is. Multicultural show, Dulles High School does. The Spanish club there hosts it and has a bunch of dancing and performances from multiple cultures that are done by students. Anyways, yeah, I was curious about like doing that because I know you've done a few dances. Oh, are they on YouTube? Does that have any like influence on you, or is that just kind of like a cool thing everyone wanted to kind of do? All the K-pop. Oh my.
Honestly, I didn't think much of it at first because we were required to do it if we were in a Spanish class. So it was, not gonna lie, it was tough like learning all the dances and stuff. And at the beginning I was like, why am I dancing to like this Bolivian dance when like I don't even know much about the culture, or like how anything about it, like, well, we have to dance to it, like what is this? But I mean, I think through those dances and like the lessons we learned in school, like I was able to more or better understand like why we have to embrace all types of cultures like around the world. And I think doing that show, like even though it's focused on like dances and like the hyped K-pop groups, I think I think it was a good lesson to like showcase different cultures and like what each one has to offer in terms of like entertainment and like singing, dancing.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a blessing to have grown up and gone to high school there. Okay. College. I mentioned earlier you're in Epic. You want to say a little bit about what Epic is?
Yeah, so Epic is a on-campus ministry that we have, or the full term is Epic Movement, and it's a branch, Asian American branch of the Crew Ministry. It's a nationwide. like organization, and so Epic is where all the Asian Americans, primarily Asian Americans, but not limited to, gather.
Cool. So in that, like, maybe a silly question, but why did you decide to join Epic?
I think I think my first year of college was when I realized like I was like Asian American and like this was something to be proud of. Not that I wasn't proud of it before, but it was not something I really bothered to think about that much. And it was due to the subtle Asian traits, subtle Asian traits Facebook group. Like I remember just thinking to myself, like I've never found a Facebook group more relatable to in my entire life. Like this was it. Like culturally, like everything, all the memes were spot on, and like there were a bunch of people that were like relating to it in the comments as well. But anyways, I joined Epic because I think it was during that time, that fall semester, my freshman year, that I realized how important it was to like appreciate like other Asian Americans, and like in terms of like ministry wise, I felt like it was a more comfortable like atmosphere environment to immerse myself in, because without it I feel like I would have missed out on a lot of like how, or like I would have missed out on a lot of how like God is changing like Asian Americans and how they feel, or the course of their sorry, the course of their like as a race, the, the course of their Asian American
Okay, I
ministry.
see. Okay. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's important. Um, I think that's why it's like I kind of wanted to talk or start this podcast because InterVarsity, our chapter is a multi-ethnic, um, and we are predominantly Asian American, but we don't really create spaces for it. That's a different subject, but so I thought it'd be cool to do this and like explore these things. Also, May again was Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and that documentary inspired. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh, deep question time. Are you ready? Since we're on the topic of we've brought up crew, religion, and being Asian American, um, I was wondering about how like God has helped you understand your Asian American identity, if that makes sense. Um, okay, because for I think a lot of the people who may end up watching this, like, they probably don't know that you didn't grow up in a Christian household. We didn't really talk about that. But now zoom ahead to college, you're in Epic, like that doesn't just happen, you know. And so, okay, there's a lot of layers to this question, but you know, take it as you will, and we can just continue exploring that.
Wait, what was the question?
Sorry. Okay. Yes, that was me just rambling. So, like mashing together like this conversation of like Asian American like that identity, that's who we are. Like, how has your faith helped you see that in like a different light, or help you understand it better? Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay, well, I guess I'll give a little background about how I became a Christian. That would help.
Hey.
Yeah. So in middle school, a lot of my friend group was like Christian. They went to the same church, that big church that we all know of. And I thought that was like cool that they had community, like aside from school and all that. And it was something I, not gonna lie, envied because of that. Like, not only community within like their friendships, but like also within their families. That wasn't something I really had growing up. Like, the only time our family would talk was like during dinner time, and that wasn't like every day either because my dad didn't work in Houston. But anyways, like that was something I really wanted for myself. So I went to a lot of summer camps, and eventually in my second year of high school, I decided to like give it a try, right? Like, if to me it was like, if God could change so many people around me, then he could also change me too. So like, why not just go for it, you know? So that's how I became a Christian. Um Afterwards, I didn't feel like being an Asian American influenced a lot of my faith until college, because I was around Asian Americans and I couldn't see like what was so unique in high school. I couldn't see what was so unique about like being Asian American if everyone around me was the same. So in college, when I started visiting different ministries like InterVarsity and their multi-ethnic, or like InterVarsity in general, or like Focus and other on-campus ministries, I started realizing that like, in order to reach more people, to spread the gospel as like God calls us to do, like we really need to branch outside of like our campus, our city, like be able to like reach other countries. And so being an Asian American is actually like very helpful in that sense, because like you look Asian, I guess a little bit American, but Asian for the most part, right? And you're able to like communicate, hopefully, in your mother tongue. So like, using those skills and qualities, like you're able to relate more to people in like East Asian or like Southeast Asian countries. And so I think through that, that's what really made me feel like being an Asian American has, or like could do, for my faith.
Okay, that's really interesting. You, at the end there, you mentioned Southeast Asian. Um, for me, like, I didn't make much differentiation between Southeast and East Asian for a long time till I got a staff worker from Southeast Asia. Um, but yeah, I'm kind of interested if you could talk a little bit more about like what you meant at the end there about like relating to them. Maybe it's obvious, but yeah.
Like the difference between
No, like, or like, what did you mean like at the end when? So not talking about like the difference. Maybe it'd be a good place to start. Like, we can talk about the difference, and then like, what does it look like? I guess as East Asians, like reaching out and I guess trying to have relationships and communication with Southeast Asians. I don't know if I
okay.
captured like what you were trying to say, but like if that makes sense.
I wasn't really gonna like talk about the differences between East Asians and Southeast Asians, but
It's whatever.
yeah,
However you
yeah.
want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like the countries and how they're developed and how exposed they are to Christianity, I would say that maybe the East Asians have more history related to Christianity than Southeast Asians. Like, of course, with many exceptions for specific countries, but I think that difference, it's partly because of how the countries are developed and like their history and like wars. So I would say like Southeast Asian countries are less open to it. So I'm sure it would be a different experience. I haven't like visited, so really like take it with a grain of salt. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would imagine that it would be very different.
That's interesting. Because, like, Vietnam, they're colonized by the French, right? And they got Catholicism from them, too. And so I know a lot of Vietnamese people, like in the States here, are Catholic. And then I think something similar with the Philippines, with Spanish conquering them, also bringing their religion. I know Indonesia's like highly Muslim. But yeah, I guess like the other neighboring Southeast Asian nations like Thailand and Malaysia, definitely not so much. Okay, interesting. Okay, so let's see. Just finished up sophomore year. Still on this like train of thought with Epic. Like you've had 2 years in this Asian American ministry. How's that been? Yeah, I'll just leave it open as with this focus of obviously Asian American.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been very welcoming, very comforting to have a community like Epic. It's not something I would have ever imagined like going into in college because I didn't really know Epic existed before then. So I thought I was like on my own kind of thing. And I think like the community really helps in like being able to build each other up through our own like cultural similarities. In terms of like having dumpling nights and like mahjong nights, like it's very like it's like another home, like being able to be far away from like Houston and like still enjoy my life and like faith and community with like other Asian Americans is really really nice to do. I've also gone to a few conferences over the past 2 years. One of them for a cruise winter conference. Another one was the first Epic National Conference. And I gotta say, like the both conferences are very different from one another. Not just because one was like predominantly Asian American, the other was like predominantly not. But I think like being able to hear from Asian Americans at the Epic National Conference was like even more inspiring as to like how I can use my identity to spread the gospel. Like I mentioned earlier, terms like features and like cultural similarities, like we're able to relate more to Asian countries when like if you go on a mission trip there, but also that like hearing from the speakers who were I think they were Asian for the most part, like they were able to help us relate to our upbringing of being in an Asian American household, which was perhaps not as welcome to religion as other ethnicities might be. And I think that was like really helpful in helping me understand um like the type, like I wasn't alone in like growing up in the household that I did, like as much as it was sheltered and like welcoming, very comfortable, like now I'm able to branch out and like actually be proud of like the Asian Americanness in me and like use that to better um the world.
Yeah. Okay. Um. when you mentioned again, like your family, yeah, that upbringing, being in a, is it non-religious or was there something, was it like Buddhist, just to get it correct?
Like my family wasn't religious, but my dad was like, I guess, leaning towards Buddhism.
Okay, cool.
It wasn't like a regular like practice though.
Okay, just making sure. Um, so I'm sure there's like a lot of tension with that now. Like you've, uh, come into the faith, and it very much so looks like you take ownership of it, and like you mentioned like that the epic National Asian American Conference, like speaking to that a little bit. So I don't know how like navigating your relationship has been, especially now like in the pandemic, like you're home all the time with them, and obviously it's summer. Um, yeah, what does that look like for you?
In the beginning, it was like they kind of thought it was just like a phase. Like I'd get over it, and like maybe in a year or two, I'd be.
You have a religion.
Yeah, I mean, maybe not that casual, but like it was short term. They thought it was short term, but as I went to college and started going to a lot more events and like telling my parents like, hey, I want to sign up for this retreat. I want to sign up for this conference, and like, can you help me pay for it? Right, that type of stuff. They started to realize like, oh, maybe I was taking this thing like seriously, and like this was something that actually mattered to me enough to get more experience outside of like going to school and being in the ministry. But in the beginning, I want to say there's a lot of tension like right now, even now, because like it's something they've accepted that is like a part of my life, and it's not like I was gonna change anytime soon. So they're okay with it, and I would even say they were like supportive of it, like allowing me to do these things. I know maybe not everyone has like the freedom to and the choice to like do all of these conferences and whatnot. But I do realize that there have been like differences in like our values and like how we would rather, or like our perspective in looking at like events. So I can't think of an example now, but we've gone into quite a few arguments because of our differences in values, and I think it's normal and it's okay for that to happen, but it's just something that I guess comes with growing up in a non-religious household.
Right. And you're an only child, right? Or,
I have an older brother.
whoops.
Yeah.
Anyways, interesting. And you're the only Christian?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Cool. Anyways, maybe your family's more of a. I mean, well, okay. You obviously mentioned that there's been disagreements and you've had uh, tense or hard conversations with them about certain topics. Um, but do you have like, I don't know, I guess advice for others who might be in a similar situation? It might be different, or it obviously would be different with, um, I think, race by race. I think there are differences in the values of each culture, but maybe it could be helpful for somebody.
Yeah. So the first piece of advice I think I would give is like stay firm in your faith. Like don't let what they say influence what you really like you really truly believe in, because I've definitely had times where I don't speak up because I think like, oh, it's 3 against 1, like what's the point, I'm gonna lose, right? But recently, like because of the pandemic, I think I've been spending more time together as a family, and I've started to like realize that I need to take ownership of like what I believe in. And it's not just like now, it's like all the time. Even if it's just like a very casual like remark that they make, like it's something I need to, I guess, like state my position on. The second piece of advice I would say is like try to help them understand your viewpoint, and like create a clear path of communication. Like if there's anything that wasn't cleared up, then you need to be sure that you're like confident about it, and like understanding their perspective helps you understand yours as well. And not to say
Wow.
like you're always right, but um you need to understand what they're saying before like you can, you know, state your point and like try to convince them that like that's not that it's right, but like it's what you believe in, right? Like there's going to be differences, and like that's something you need to acknowledge early on.
Yeah, well, yeah. So I guess those are good reminders for anybody. Oh man, that's cool with the second one. Like heavily about communication. I know it's pretty stereotyped that like mm, communication with words isn't always like the go-to. It's like communications with, or they express like love with like food or the work they do. Um, yeah, so it's encouraging to hear you say like um, just the importance of making sure that these ideas are conveyed and understood by both parties. Okay. Um. Cool. Well, let's see. We can end with this then. Like, where do you? This is kind of like a dreamer question, but where do you want to go with this like Asian American journey? Whether it be like it includes religion or not. I think I asked this last time too. Yeah, okay.
Like in terms of my I guess my future, or like
I mean, yes. I mean, like inherently, the question assumes the future, right? Well, I can like answer first if you
okay.
want time. I mean, it's the same answer from last time, but still holds. I haven't really done a lot of research into it. But I think talking to you and learning more about Taiwan and a little bit of that history firsthand, like, is cool. For me, it was to understand or try to understand like the vast Asian diaspora that exists. Because yeah, it's so much. Pretty sure it's like we Asians make up the most amount of people on the planet too, and there's like so many like little pockets of culture. Like even just China's huge, but like I don't know, what, over 100 languages or something, and like so many cultures. But I'm so ignorant to it before, and like I don't know. I think like the more and more I learn, like the less I'm like I can't turn a blind eye anymore. Um, and like being aware of like this like Asian hierarchy, I guess. I talked about it in the episode of Gracie too. How like I think there's basically like maybe 2, maybe 3 levels. I don't know, at least 2. It's like Chinese, Japanese, and like Korean, and then like maybe like some Indian people who've like made it, I guess, or like the like wow, that's what you like the model minority, right? And there's like other ethnic groups in that too, but like those are like the general 3 or 4 that I think mass society like acknowledges. And then there's like everybody else that's like a second tier. It's like there's a lot of brokenness in that, and like God calls us to justice, and so I'm going to continually be on a journey to understand that and understand my own implicit biases better. Yeah.
Wow, thanks for sharing. That's not something I've like thought about that much, but I will say like seeing Asians in media especially has helped me like think of not ideas, but like I hope I can think of ideas that I can better be able to help other races understand the like Taiwanese culture that I'm from, or like the Asian like ethnicity as a whole, Asian race as a whole, and like be able to use more, I guess, Americanized ways to reach other types of people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I think when the part you mentioned about like helping others understand like things about Taiwan, like it's such a small, right, island nation. It's like you kind of just get lumped in with China. It's like it has its own unique history and culture too. Yeah, well, okay, cool. Thanks for chatting. Thanks for doing this. If there, do you have any ideas for people you want to see, or anybody you think I should talk to?
This is.
I just threw you on the spot. I mean, it could be someone
I can message you some people that.
Oh, you don't want to call them out here. I mean, that's fine. You don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they watch this, but
Look, no one actually makes it to the end of this. We're at like the 1 hour mark. Like, actually, well, you never know, but
put it on double speed for maximum efficiency.
Oh my gosh! I guess that's so funny. Millennials, Gen Zers. I gotta do 2 times speed.
You're a part of them too.
I understand that twice. I don't even know. My neurons are being nourished faster. Oh my gosh. I enjoy it slow and steady. Okay, that's cool. Alright. Thumbnail time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I move this?
No, that's fine. You just leave it there. It's fine. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Yes.
I guess I'll scoot out of frame.
Why?
Not out of frame, like I'll scoot over.
Okay. Oh wow. Look at your bookcase, all your books.
Oh gosh, I gotta cover that.
Why? Oh my gosh. Are you embarrassed of your books?
No. It's just they're kind of messy.
What? That's messy? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's
anyways. I can wrap up the recording. Okay.
Yeah,
if you ended up Yeah. Thank you for coming. If you feel impassioned to talk about being Asian American again, come back.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay. If you made it to the end of this video, thanks. You're
Thanks for
cool.
listening.
Bye-bye.